In this episode, we are moving into a topic that sits at the center of everyday organizational stability, even though it does not always get the attention that major projects or dramatic security events receive, and that topic is evaluating information technology, IT, operations and maintenance practices. For new learners, this area can seem ordinary at first because it deals with daily work that is supposed to feel routine. Systems are expected to stay available, devices are expected to function, applications are expected to respond, and users generally assume the environment will keep running without needing to think much about the effort behind it. That ordinary feeling is exactly why this topic matters so much. When operations and maintenance are handled well, the organization experiences continuity, reliability, and trust almost as background conditions. When they are handled poorly, the problems usually show up everywhere at once through outages, delays, repeated fixes, frustrated users, security gaps, and growing operational risk. An auditor studies this area because stable technology service rarely happens by accident. It usually depends on disciplined practices that keep the environment functioning, supported, monitored, and improved over time. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful place to start is by separating the two main ideas in the title, because operations and maintenance are closely related but not identical. IT operations refers to the ongoing activities required to keep systems, services, and infrastructure functioning from day to day. That includes things like monitoring, job processing, support coordination, scheduling, routine administration, access to shared resources, and the oversight needed to make sure technology services continue to meet business needs. Maintenance, by contrast, refers to the work done to preserve, restore, or improve those systems and services over time. Maintenance may involve installing updates, replacing failing components, correcting defects, tuning performance, renewing support arrangements, or addressing wear, age, and technical weakness before they lead to disruption. The two areas constantly interact because operations depends on maintenance to remain healthy, while maintenance must be planned in a way that does not unnecessarily damage operations. From an audit perspective, evaluating these practices means asking whether the organization runs its environment in a controlled and dependable way, and whether it takes care of that environment before weakness turns into a larger business problem. One reason this area is so important is that operations and maintenance practices form the living foundation underneath almost every business process that depends on technology. A company may invest heavily in security tools, application development, cloud platforms, analytics, and digital services, but if the operational environment is unstable, then the value of all those investments becomes harder to realize. Systems that fail frequently or degrade slowly over time interrupt work, weaken trust, and force employees into workarounds that can create additional control problems. Even organizations with strong project teams can struggle badly if they do not give equal attention to the daily discipline required to keep existing services reliable. For beginners, it helps to think of this area as the care and feeding of the technology environment. Operations keeps the business moving in the present, while maintenance helps ensure that the present remains sustainable into the future. An auditor therefore looks beyond whether systems simply exist and asks whether the organization has created repeatable practices that support continuity, resilience, and predictable service quality rather than relying on constant improvisation. A strong evaluation begins with understanding the routine activities that make up IT operations. These can include system monitoring, production processing, platform administration, service scheduling, support coordination, workload management, log review, infrastructure oversight, and the day-to-day handling of events that affect normal service. Many of these tasks seem unremarkable precisely because they are supposed to happen consistently and quietly. A backup process that runs every night without issue, a batch job that completes on schedule, or a server resource alert that is reviewed and resolved quickly may never receive praise from the broader business. Yet these are examples of operations discipline doing its job. Auditors are interested in whether those routines are clearly defined, assigned, tracked, and supported by appropriate oversight. If too much depends on a few individuals remembering things from experience rather than following controlled processes, the environment becomes fragile. Good operations are not just about technical skill. They are about creating enough structure that important daily tasks continue to happen reliably even when workload is high, staff change, or other priorities compete for attention. Maintenance practices require a slightly different lens because they often involve preserving future stability rather than responding only to present conditions. A device may still be working, an application may still be available, and a server may still be carrying business traffic, yet all of them may need maintenance to remain dependable. This is why beginners should understand the difference between waiting for something to break and caring for it before failure becomes visible. Good maintenance practices usually include planned updates, hardware review, software patching, supported version management, capacity tuning, replacement scheduling, defect correction, and periodic checks on whether systems remain fit for their current workload and risk profile. Auditors examine whether the organization approaches maintenance as a disciplined responsibility or as an activity that is deferred until it becomes unavoidable. Deferred maintenance often creates a false sense of savings in the short term, but the longer-term result is usually greater instability, harder recovery, rising security exposure, and more urgent change at exactly the wrong time. Mature organizations understand that maintenance is part of responsible service delivery, not an optional extra. A useful teaching point here is the difference between preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. Preventive maintenance is work done in advance to reduce the likelihood of future problems, such as applying tested updates, replacing aging components, cleaning up storage issues, reviewing system health trends, or renewing dependencies before they expire. Corrective maintenance happens after something has already gone wrong, such as fixing a failed service, repairing a damaged configuration, or restoring a system after an error or malfunction. Both types are necessary, but they tell different stories about the health of the environment. An organization that spends nearly all of its effort on corrective maintenance may be living in a reactive mode where teams are constantly catching up rather than managing stability deliberately. An auditor will often look for signs of that imbalance through repeated emergency work, chronic overdue updates, recurring failure patterns, or staff who seem trapped in constant operational firefighting. Preventive practices are not exciting, but they often reveal whether the organization is governing technology responsibly or merely surviving from one issue to the next. Change management connects directly to operations and maintenance because many operational problems are created not by natural wear alone, but by changes introduced without enough planning, control, or testing. A maintenance activity such as a patch, configuration update, platform upgrade, or hardware replacement may be necessary and completely appropriate, yet it can still cause disruption if scheduled poorly or implemented without adequate review. For that reason, auditors do not evaluate maintenance in isolation from change practices. They want to know whether the organization assesses impact before making modifications, whether approvals are defined, whether rollback plans exist when needed, and whether business timing is considered so maintenance does not collide with critical operational windows. This is especially important in environments that must remain continuously available or that support sensitive transactions. A healthy organization does not avoid change because change carries risk. Instead, it treats maintenance-related change as something that must be introduced thoughtfully so that preserving the environment does not unintentionally destabilize it. Well-governed operations usually show a clear relationship between maintenance needs and controlled execution. Monitoring is one of the clearest windows into the quality of IT operations because it shows whether the organization can see trouble early enough to respond intelligently. Monitoring may involve system health indicators, performance thresholds, storage consumption, network behavior, service availability, application errors, job completion status, or other signals that reveal whether the environment is behaving normally. Good monitoring is not just about collecting large amounts of data. It is about identifying what truly matters, reviewing it consistently, and making sure alerts lead to meaningful action rather than background noise. Auditors pay attention to this because an organization can have modern tools and still miss important issues if thresholds are poorly defined, responsibilities are unclear, or staff no longer trust the alerts they receive. Weak monitoring often leads to an uncomfortable pattern where users notice service failure before IT does, or where repeated warnings are ignored because the environment produces too many insignificant signals. Strong operations practices create visibility that supports timely action, and that visibility becomes one of the strongest indicators that the organization is managing daily service with discipline rather than operating blindly. Incident handling is another area closely tied to operational evaluation because daily operations are tested most directly when something stops working as expected. An incident might involve a service outage, a degraded application, failed processing, a hardware malfunction, or unexpected behavior that affects normal business activity. The question for an auditor is not whether incidents ever happen, because even strong environments experience them. The more important question is whether the organization responds in a controlled, repeatable, and informative way. That includes detecting the incident, classifying its impact, assigning responsibility, communicating appropriately, escalating when necessary, documenting the response, and restoring service with a level of urgency that matches business needs. Maintenance practices also matter here, because many incidents reveal whether the environment was cared for properly beforehand. If the same failures keep returning, if emergency fixes substitute for durable correction, or if teams cannot explain the root causes behind repeated disruption, that suggests deeper weakness in both operations and maintenance. A well-run environment does not guarantee silence. It does, however, respond to noise in a way that reduces uncertainty and builds confidence over time. Capacity and performance management are also essential parts of evaluating operations and maintenance practices because technology can fail through exhaustion just as easily as through direct malfunction. A system does not need to crash completely to cause business harm. It may slow down gradually, run out of storage, struggle under increased user demand, or become unstable because the environment was never adjusted as needs changed. Good operations include watching resource usage and understanding trends before they become emergencies. Good maintenance includes tuning, scaling, replacing, or redesigning elements of the environment when the current setup no longer supports the expected workload safely. Auditors look for evidence that the organization understands what its systems need to perform reliably and whether there is a process for responding when those needs change. This can include reviewing growth trends, analyzing repeated performance degradation, considering business seasonality, and ensuring that infrastructure or application support keeps pace with actual use. Weak capacity practices often show up as surprise failures that were visible in advance to anyone who was watching carefully enough, which is exactly why they matter in evaluation. Backup, recovery, and continuity considerations also belong in this discussion because operations and maintenance are not only about keeping systems alive during normal conditions. They are also about ensuring that the organization can recover reasonably when something goes wrong. Backups that are never validated, recovery steps that exist only in theory, or maintenance activities that accidentally undermine resilience can all create serious exposure. An auditor evaluating this area will want to know whether backups complete reliably, whether recovery processes are understood, whether restoration has been tested appropriately, and whether the maintenance lifecycle takes continuity needs into account. For example, a system may be upgraded or reconfigured in ways that affect backup compatibility, recovery timing, or failover behavior if those dependencies are not reviewed carefully. This is one reason operations and maintenance cannot be treated as separate islands. A healthy environment considers how routine service, maintenance activities, and resilience expectations fit together as one operating picture. When those pieces are aligned, the organization is more likely to recover effectively. When they are disconnected, small maintenance choices can quietly weaken readiness for larger disruption. Documentation and knowledge transfer are often overlooked by beginners, yet they are among the most practical signs of operational maturity. A stable environment should not depend entirely on a few long-serving individuals who know the quirks of important systems from memory. Procedures, support information, scheduling practices, maintenance histories, escalation expectations, and recovery steps need to be documented clearly enough that others can understand and follow them when necessary. This does not mean that every task requires a huge manual. It means that important operational knowledge should be captured in a form that supports continuity, training, and consistent execution. Auditors review documentation because poor record-keeping usually makes everything harder. Maintenance may be delayed because nobody knows what was changed last time. Recovery may slow down because the current procedure no longer matches the live environment. Staff turnover may become an operational risk because essential knowledge leaves with one employee. Strong documentation helps the organization move from person-dependent operation to process-supported operation, which is one of the clearest signs that daily service can survive pressure and change. People, roles, and accountability also deserve close attention in this area, because even the best tools and procedures will not create stable operations if responsibilities are vague or staffing is unrealistic. Someone must know who monitors key services, who performs recurring maintenance, who approves high-impact work, who communicates with business stakeholders during disruption, and who confirms that critical tasks were completed correctly. Auditors often find weakness where operations look busy but ownership is unclear. A team may assume another group is handling a review, or maintenance windows may be missed because everyone thought the task belonged elsewhere. In other cases, the roles may be clear on paper but impossible in practice because staffing is too thin, skills are too narrow, or dependence on one person has grown too extreme. Evaluating operations and maintenance, therefore, includes asking whether the organization has assigned responsibilities in a workable way and whether the people carrying those responsibilities have the time, authority, and knowledge needed to perform them reliably. Good practice is not only procedural, it is also organizational. Vendor relationships and asset conditions can also influence operational and maintenance quality, especially in environments that rely on outside support, managed services, replacement parts, or licensed platforms. An organization may believe its internal operations are sound while overlooking the fact that critical maintenance depends on vendor availability, contract timing, remote support access, or access to supported components. If those relationships are weak or poorly monitored, routine maintenance can turn into delay, cost escalation, or service disruption. Auditors may review whether support agreements remain current, whether unsupported products remain in production longer than planned, and whether the organization understands what parts of the maintenance burden belong internally versus externally. Asset lifecycle awareness matters here as well. Devices, platforms, and applications age, and their maintenance needs usually become more difficult as support narrows and compatibility problems increase. A mature organization does not wait for the environment to announce that it is too old to support safely. It plans around lifecycle reality so that maintenance remains manageable and operations remain trustworthy instead of increasingly fragile. From an audit standpoint, evaluating IT operations and maintenance practices means gathering evidence that daily service is being managed deliberately rather than informally. That evidence may include operational procedures, job schedules, maintenance records, incident histories, monitoring reports, capacity reviews, backup results, support documentation, change records, asset information, and interviews with the people responsible for keeping the environment healthy. The auditor compares these sources to see whether the organization's story matches what the environment actually shows. If management says maintenance is timely but critical updates remain overdue for long periods, that mismatch matters. If procedures say monitoring is reviewed daily but alerts are unresolved or poorly documented, that matters too. A strong environment usually shows repeatable routines, visible accountability, planned maintenance, useful monitoring, informed incident response, and evidence that recurring issues are being learned from rather than merely endured. A weak environment usually shows reactive work, unclear ownership, deferred upkeep, limited visibility, and a constant dependence on urgent effort to make up for missing discipline. As we close, the main lesson is that evaluating IT operations and maintenance practices is really about asking whether the organization cares for its technology environment in a way that supports dependable service, manageable risk, and long-term sustainability. Operations keeps the present working, while maintenance helps make sure the present does not quietly decay into instability. Auditors look at this area because many visible failures begin as ordinary weaknesses in daily oversight, delayed upkeep, poor visibility, unclear responsibility, or repeated short-term fixes that were never turned into durable improvement. When operations and maintenance are strong, users often experience technology as stable and trustworthy without thinking much about why. When those practices are weak, even well-funded systems can become unpredictable, fragile, and costly to support. For a new learner, that is the idea worth remembering most clearly. Good IT service is not just built through major projects or security investments. It is preserved every day through disciplined operational habits and thoughtful maintenance that keep the environment healthy enough to support the business with confidence.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.